Terence Bud Crawford makes boxing history, being the only fighter to go from 135 pounds to 168 pounds to become champion. The first three-time undisputed champion in men's boxing in the four-belt era, and puts on a performance against Canelo Alvarez last night that will be studied by young fighters for many years to come. The mastery of what he did. And I want to start by giving him credit by saying he executed at such a high level against a great fighter in Canelo, who is 35 or whatever, but dialed it up. This wasn't the Canelo against William Skull or Edgar Berlanga. This was more like the Canelo against Jermell Charlo, who was a very good version of Canelo. And Canelo dialed up the feints early. His positioning was strong early. He came out the gates feigning more than Crawford, moving his head more than Crawford. And what was so impressive about what Crawford would do counter punching, and then we'll get into everything, is that Canelo would do so many things correctly at such a high level. Level change, feint, throw a little something out, and then throw a nicely placed shot. I know down the stretch, some of those left hooks, Crawford made them look ugly with how wide they were, and they would counter. But especially early, Canelo would be doing a lot of good things, placing body shots really well. And Crawford's ability to counter two or three times at once, again, that is his true gift that makes him really special to me. A lot of champions can turn you in the center of the ring off their jab, know their sense of distance, but they don't have his punch selection at any given time where you don't know what's coming. And the counter punching, I knew heading into this fight, he's an all-time great counter puncher. Now he's solidified that he's an all-time great fighter. And I hesitate to do that because I go, well, if Crawford's going to pull this off, is this a stat porn thing a little bit where it's amazing, it's great, but hey, in sports today, Matthew Stafford has more passing yards than Joe Montana and Steve Young and John Elway, and doesn't mean he's actually better than him. He's in an era where accumulating stats is king a little bit. But what made it easy to bypass, because I didn't know if I wanted to just elevate Terence above Oscar De La Hoya, Mike McCallum, Sugar Shane. What I mean is a whole tier, James Toney, a whole tier of great fighters that I considered him a part of. I didn't consider him heading into last night. Sugar Ray, Henry Armstrong, Floyd. What makes it easy for me to put him there is that's what my eyes saw last night, is a guy who's that great. The timing, the punch, everything. It was a great performance by Terence Crawford.
Before the fight, I said he's comfortable at the weight, right? The weight was so not a factor that I believe Canelo, in his first 6 rounds, fought a fight to prove something. And we had this discussion also the morning of the fight, that he could box, that he did move around a lot more than I've seen Canelo on his feet, and was light. It wasn't that Crawford was running or that even Canelo wasn't able to meet Crawford and find him. It was that when Canelo found him, he couldn't do anything with him. That was what was frustrating Canelo. I had the first 6 rounds 3-3. It was an even fight going into 7, but Canelo only had 6 rounds of that fight in him. And I believe he thought 6 rounds of this, I'm going to be well ahead in this fight, if not have already knocked this man out. I think he came out believing this performance I'm about to do, see me light on my feet, see me able to cut the ring off a little bit, I'm going to find Crawford, no problem. The body shots are going to work, it'll slow him down. All of that, he was able to execute, but not able to be effective with. He found Crawford. He hit him to the body. He was light on his feet. His footwork was fantastic. It wasn't effective. Crawford being the counterpuncher that you just described, the problem with that is that that's Canelo's thing. Canelo's the counterpuncher.
The pull counter guy on the front foot.
He's the guy that makes you find him, and then he returns fire. And when you hit him in the exchange, maybe once, he's slipping the second and third shot and coming back at you. Now he's got you in the exchange and he's getting the better of it. What happened here is when the exchange comes, if you even want to call it that, Crawford's first counterpunch is hitting Canelo with a punch he doesn't expect. Not that he didn't even see coming. It was just like, that's not the punch you're supposed to throw right now. How are you hitting me with that shot? And by the time Canelo is coming back with his counter to the counter, Crawford's either gone or is slipping it and hitting him with one more before Crawford gets out. Frustration began from the opening bell, even when Canelo was having success. It wasn't the kind of success, or it wasn't the kind of effective success that he was expecting. And then we go into 7, where Canelo, famously, nobody needs to be a boxing analyst at this point. You just got to be a viewer to know that that's when the shift happens with Canelo for ages. He dials down, shifts down, and starts setting his punches heavy, starts sitting on shots and expecting to just chop wood and get you out of there. He was looking immediately for that con moment. But the difference was his legs were stiff. You saw him going into the 7th, and okay, so what's it going to be? Now, me, knowing boxing, knowing Canelo, expecting that the 7th round is going to be a change, but it's not usually as dramatic. His legs knotted up on him in the 7th. They got stiff, and he stopped even attempting to do any of this moving around. He was like, all right, now it's time for me to... And he, like I said, the fight was even, so he's figuring he's just going through his normal Canelo gears, and Crawford is going to submit. That performance from 7 through 12 was a shutout for me. Mm-hmm. That's Crawford 7 through 12 on Canelo. The 11th round, he was mentally broken. Mm-hmm. The 11th round is when Canelo gave up. He didn't quit. That's different. But he gave up, man. He was like, nothing's working. I'm not able to get off. I'm not going to be able to knock this motherfucker out. Fuck. And he had to just go through the motions of the next 6 minutes, knowing that he's about to lose this fight and couldn't do anything with his opponent.
Samantha's watching the fight. My wife, Raheem, of course, knows what I mean by Samantha. Samantha's watching the fight, and Samantha used to go to all the big fights before she had to have my kids, and now she's staying home watching the fights. And she texts me late in the fight, and she goes, now Canelo just doesn't want to get knocked out. And she was saying in the corner, Reynoso was saying, do this, do that. And he was going back at Reynoso in the corner saying, he's getting me with the jab. So Reynoso would be asking Canelo to execute something, and he's like, and quickly, before I can let you get back to cooking, when they use the phrase in boxing, pick your spots. And by the way, back to what you were saying about the counterpunch and then initiating and punctuating the exchange. That's when I say counterpunching, that's along with what Crawford's gift is, and that's a lost art from what the greatest fighters are able to do: initiate and punctuate, have the last word in the argument. He's great at that. But when we use the term picking your spots, this was the definition of how you pick your spots in a fight. Crawford, it started even having a pattern as the fight went on of, in the first minute, lighting Canelo up and holding his ground, then taking the air out of the ball for a minute and a half, and then kind of punctuating, kind of like he did in the exchanges. And he never used one ingredient too heavily. The length and the jab were an issue for Canelo. The length and the jab and all that. So he didn't get counterpunch too much. He didn't just turn off the jab too much. And then down the stretch in 10 and 11, just in case the judges are thinking of fucking me, he did what he did against Madrimov in the 12th in LA last year. Sat in there and hurt his man a little bit. In the 12th round, he buckled Canelo at the bell. So in 10-11, he just in case you guys are thinking, because Canelo's consistently been coming forward, and after I make my point in some of these early rounds, I'm taking the air out of the ball. I'm going to stand right in here with the phone booth, let him land his chopping arm shots, body shots, and light his ass up 2 or 3 to 1. And that was like, hey, even if you guys were thinking of robbing him tonight, and they were, because the scorecards were 116, 112, 115, 113. Sounds like you had 117, 111. I had the same, 117, 111, maybe even 118, 110. Crawford just wouldn't let them do that. So
he took away every justification you could possibly give for Canelo winning that fight. Yeah. If he had been robbed or even gotten a draw, he could point to anything you say that Canelo did better or how he could have possibly won more rounds and shut it down. He systematically not only fought Canelo, he fought three judges. He
Mhm.
fought three judges. He was that calculating. The artistry that you describe is the punch breakdown. The mastery is the knowledge, not just of ring
When
IQ, but boxing IQ. I got to beat these judges too. The performance, I mean, when you look at how encompassing his strategy was in that light, the man did more than what the fan sees in the ring. He's working the crowd by starting those rounds fast, and then also he's breaking Canelo down mentally with the licking out the tongue. And I don't like showboating. That's my least favorite thing about boxing. I don't care how far ahead you are, how much you're dominating. I hate showboating. However, I wouldn't call what Crawford did last night showboating. I would call it mentally breaking your fighter down because Canelo is prideful. And Canelo usually punishes you for fucking with him like that. And when he couldn't punish Crawford for clowning him in those spots, not even disrespectfully, just like, nope, that didn't work. I'm still having fun in here. I'm smiling. I'm in rhythm. I'm fighting in spots when I want to fight, and I'm making you chase me when I don't want to fight, and then I'm punctuating the round, and you can't do nothing about it. That's what broke Canelo in the 11th round. To Samantha's point, Canelo started deciding to survive in 10, but he gave his best effort at the top of 11 to try, all right, no, 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 I'm coming at him. And when that didn't work, he did decide, I've got to survive these last rounds, and I don't even fucking want to be here anymore. I wasn't sure if this was a 15-round fight, we might have a no Moss moment. You understand? Like, that's how far I believe mentally Canelo was getting broken down by the 12th round. That we've never seen before. Never even seen anything close to Canelo doing that before.
Bivol, about halfway past the midpoint, he kind of conceded defeat a little bit against Bivol. Never really tried to go out on a shield.
You think Canelo was in a mental place?
I think he was no. I think Crawford. I think he was excusing himself less for losing to this guy. So I think he was more determined for deeper into the fight than he was against Bivol.
Post Bivol, though, Canelo thought he won the fight. Right. I think Canelo thought, Bivol, this is bullshit.
Bivol didn't put the punches on Canelo that Crawford did. Bivol actually, a lot of his flurries missed against Canelo. When Canelo came in the post fight and I saw how lumped up one side of his face was, I go, oh, he got his ass kicked. Like when he lost to Bivol, he lost, and I know but this was different. This was a superior performance. But in Canelo's mind,
not only did he not lose, that he didn't really respect that performance.
Right.
It was just
Right.
So I think you saw maybe a lackluster. He wasn't enthusiastically fighting, but he wasn't surviving or giving up. He was just like bullshit.
Right, right. Yeah, he was actually arrogantly losing the Bivol fight. He's like, whatever, I'm tired. You ain't shit. You got me. Crawford, it was like.
Yes, it was like, I can't do anything with this guy. And in the post-fight presser, I asked Canelo, did you hit Crawford with your best shot? And he just stood up to it and took it. And he said, no, I never hit him with my best punch.
And it was some good punches.
He hit him with some good punches, but for Canelo, those are setup punches. He hit him clean a couple of times, but none of those were the signature Canelo shots.
Right.
And those are the shots that usually Canelo will come behind and hit you with the big money maker. And the fact that he could never land that big shot, the fact that there was, in his words, he was asked, what was frustrating you about Crawford's style? He said, everything. Everything? Everything.
Mm-hmm.
That is the definition of being dominated. And also, let me tell you something. It's a definition of a sportsman and a class act. To be honest and gracious and tip of the hat, no excuses, no hedging. He was so beaten that he couldn't even mount a defense for how he could have done better. And I'm not saying that to diminish him or to roast him. I'm saying that out of respect for him because that's an honest answer.
I have a little pushback on Canelo's post-fight. I totally agree with you on one hand, and I think it's a sentiment that should have resonance throughout our society. Okay, better man won, and I'm going to respect that. Two men got in the ring and fight. Someone must win. Someone must lose. And as a real man, you give credit to the man if he defeated you, and there's no shame in losing a prize fight, right? But in this scenario where you ducked a Mexican American kid, David Benavidez, that you could have fought without any Saudi government backing, could have done without TKO. You could have probably sold out a legion against Benavidez and just eat what you kill. But instead, you go for probably twice the money that is great. Is you're not actually worth on paper. You're going to get overpaid to fight a guy coming up in weight instead of eating what you kill against the guy in your weight class that everybody wants to see you win against. And you lose against Crawford in doing that. The whole place showed up to see you, and you let them down. And by the way, the Mexican fans were very underwhelming last night, just like they were when they lost to Bivol. It wouldn't have mattered. They could have turned it into the Roman Coliseum for Canelo. He wasn't beating Terence Crawford. But I got to call them out because they gave him no home court, really. His ring walk was completely dead. We got done after Friday talking about how amazing the atmosphere was in T-Mobile. I think the atmosphere last night was underwhelming overall, outside of Crawford's great performance. Mobili and Martinez put on a war. I expected a little, based on what we felt at that weigh-in, I expected a little bit more. And this was before Crawford sucked the wind out of the room. So for Canelo, part of me was like, if this really means something to you, I need to see a little bit more shame. I need to see a little bit more. I'm not just going to wake up tomorrow, hey, it's okay, I lost. I made 100+ million. Otherwise, this shit doesn't matter. Does it not matter to you that you've sold the whole place out, ducked Benavidez, and then ultimately let them down after selling out to these people? No, it's okay. All right.
I've had that sentiment with fighters before, namely Andy Ruiz. Granted, he admitted he didn't train for the rematch with Joshua, and that just infuriated me. We've had this discussion, but I felt like Andy seemed okay with it after the fight, which made me want to become a fighter just so I could fight Andy Ruiz.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Well,
Because there was one part I didn't tie into the crowd. I'm contrasting it with Pacquiao's crowd in July, Raheem. Pacquiao's crowd willed him to the fit. Like, Pacquiao did what he did, but they were on point. Anytime he had a lull or was Manny, there's two different types of fans. That there's one that shows up and waits for something good to happen to cheer, and then there's the ones that understand their part in all this if they actually want their guy to win. You got to bring
all
the
I do
yeah,
is
so,
these are separate issues
yeah,
because Canelo post-fight fans in the arena
Just
made him
had
two
to tie
different
that
things,
loose
right?
end up. Go
So
ahead.
in this case, I don't think you're looking at a fighter who doesn't care about all the things that you said.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually some solace, some peace in knowing that you really did lose to the better man.
Mm-hmm.
The shame comes when you feel like you didn't do all you could do, or you allowed him to do something that you shouldn't have permitted. There was something else, an adjustment you could have made. You should have been more focused. You shouldn't have had an argument with your wife that morning. You should have ate that cheeseburger. You should have gotten more sleep. You should have listened to your corner. That's where the shame comes in. But when you did everything that you can do, when you were in shape, when you were ready, when your game plan was working for 6 rounds, when you executed to the best of your ability, and you honestly can say to yourself, I faced the better man, and everything was a problem. I couldn't do anything with them. I never landed one of my signature punches. It's not resolve because you don't care. It's peace because you can't change it. And that's maturity. That's knowing the things you can change. That's why I don't think we're going to see a rematch because Canelo knows this is one of the things he can't change. And I don't begrudge him that peace. And the only thing that comes from that peace that demonstrates character is confessing it and being completely honest about it. And he did that. Tip of the hat, man. Sometimes you just get beat. Canelo got beat every which way from Sunday. Nothing to say, also nothing to shame.
One thing I want to point out about Terence Crawford. there's these archetypes in boxing. The great Mexican fighter. Right now, the Eastern European fighter has exploded in the last 10 to 15 years, and their school of boxing and the culture that comes along with it, their mentality, their approach and temperament to the sport. We know the Mexican temperament and approach and a lot of the style to the sport, and so on and so forth, all these different cultures. This was yet another reminder that when it comes to boxing, that little black kid from the ghetto is quite a formidable force till this day at this highest level. And that archetype still remains king, still has produced the greatest amount of fighters in the world. And I am proud to acknowledge that as a fellow American. May not be a black American, but I'm American. These people are my countrymen. And the United States has the most world champions in the history of boxing. Mexico's at number 2. So you saw the top 2 historic cultures, at it in the ring, and they're going to do it again and again and again. This is a great rivalry. I want to acknowledge that because I don't know, some people for some reason, I don't know, I get uncomfortable about it. They don't acknowledge it. We're quicker to acknowledge the Japanese honor and culture, the Mexican warrior, the stoicism and skill of the Eastern European. Tip of the hat to the black American fighter, which has in fact produced the greatest fighters of all time. If you made a Mount Rushmore, they might all be black American. If it's Ali, Robinson, Henry Armstrong, Joe Louis, Floyd Mayweather, Terence Crawford, Roy Jones. Salute. That's not pandering. That's calling it what the fuck it is.
And it's also looking at boxing through a lens that is less and less viewed. I saw in the comments and some of our shows that people were calling for when we were talking about that really outside the bubble, there wasn't the kind of fervor for this fight. The excitement really hadn't crossed over. Inside, we were talking about it, but outside, maybe it was a bit lackluster. And people were like, well, where's the race card? Where is the Mexican versus black? Where is America versus Mexico? And that just really wasn't a part of this narrative. And it was in such low-hanging fruit. The world's not like that really anymore. And I understand that race and country, nationality, and all that is.
Yeah, before people go, the black kid from the ghetto. I mean,
hold on, but they're not seeing fighters through that lens anymore. They really are seeing them as individuals. And yes, Mexico pride, the flags, all of that. Crawford really didn't come in on American flags and Pledge of Allegiance. In fact, he came in tipping his hat to Mexican movies. He had, the guitar case, and he was mouthing, there was a mariachi music and everything. I don't think that was a troll. I think that was a homage. It's like, Mexican Independence Day is for me too, right? It's not seen like that anymore. It was set up with the matchup and the weight and the experience and the power and all the things that are elements of the fight. But what you just talked about is something that people call, there's generational trauma based on what your ancestors have been to. There's also generational greatness. There's also things that are imparted to you because of the community in which you learned how to perform this profession, to where you got the culture of boxing where you come from has something to do with the way you perform boxing when you get into these hot moments. It's what's in you. It's your spirit. And it is something to be proud of. And you see that pride coming from fighters. But what I don't miss that pride being juxtaposed in a negative way, which is not what you're doing.
No. I'm celebrating. I'm giving credit to. You know what I mean? What I'm saying is he added another chapter and continued and prolonged the greatest lineage in this sport. That's all I was trying to say.
Yeah, and Canelo has pursued his career like a classic Mexican legend. Look at how many rounds, how many fights he's had, and the way he was expected to win by walking Crawford down and beating him with power, probably eating some shots for the trouble, but wasn't going to be hurt by that, was going to be a come forward, break him down, knock him out fighter for those who are picking Canelo to win. Crawford doesn't fight nearly as often, hasn't had as many fights in his career. His approach to this fight was hit, not be hit, fight in spots, showboat a little bit to make the audience know that whatever you think you're seeing, just in case some of these shots that are hitting me on the arms or getting to my body, you think they're hurting me or you think they're big shots. Let me let you know that they're not. Working the judges, and when he decides those spots are necessary to fight in, and then breaking Canelo down by frustrating him like Leonard Duran. That's why we might have seen another no mas moment. Yes, those cultures clashed at their highest level. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't need to be extricated from the narrative. It just doesn't need to be turned negative in the narrative.
Yeah. Because sometimes, multiculturalism is used to pit people against each other and tear each other apart. What I love about boxing, it's the most beautiful multiculturalism I've ever seen. You genuinely learn to appreciate other people and cultures that you wouldn't know without the sport. That's what it's supposed to do, not make people call each other slurs in the YouTube comments for 7 weeks in a build up to a fight.
Right.
So.
Right. Boy. I do want to just touch on one more thing in the post-fight. And this is after all the questions have been asked and answered. The amount of respect that both of these men had for each other and the way that Canelo conducted himself when answering those very tough and potentially pride-injuring questions, and the fact that Terence Crawford waited, because he did his press conference, Crawford first. And then Canelo loaded in. Canelo comes with, the big crowd, and it takes him a minute to get settled, and his family and his trainers and all that, as it should be. And it takes a minute, and he's going through the questions. I didn't even realize that in the wings, quietly, by himself, holding all the belts, was Terence Crawford, waiting on the side in the crowd. And when Canelo was done, said goodbye to the press, began to make his exit to the stage. He was met on side stage, still up there on the podium, though, by the undisputed super middleweight champion, Terence Crawford, with all the belts in his arms, and handed them back to Canelo. Because what some fans don't know is that actual hardware belongs to Canelo. Those are his belts, and Crawford will get his own set of belts. But those belts that you saw on screen last night don't just go to Crawford's house. Those go in Canelo's trophy case, and Crawford gets his own belts. But what a lot of fighters will do, will send you those belts after the fact. They'll spend the night with your belts. Instead of you want to be a dick,
which is what he did to Spence, right?
With your belts.
Right.
Right? But he, in front of Canelo's daughter, who he had a little interaction with, in front of the press, who obviously is going to be watching, he made the gesture of, this belongs to you. Respect. They shook. And then Canelo and Crawford were able to exit. Crawford never said another word to the press. He didn't step on Canelo's moment. He didn't engage anybody. He stayed to make that gesture when everybody in his family, all of his fans, they're all partying, they're all waiting for the big champ, and he waited for Canelo. That is what this sport is about. That's why I'm proud to be a part of this community.
I will close after all this praise, deservedly, for Terence, the great Terence Crawford, with a critique, because I'm a journalist at the end of the day, and you're going to go to 15 channels this morning and hear a lot of overlap about how great Crawford is. Allow me to say, George Orwell said in 1984, journalism is saying what nobody wants printed, everything else is PR. So we've given Crawford, so little pushback on Terence Crawford. And people are saying, because I broke down this fight perfectly, how he could win. I was like, I see the masterpiece coming, but I'm picking Canelo, right? And it's like, yeah, maybe I did have a bone to pick with Terence Crawford, aside from that. And I understand, I'm being transparent with the audience and explaining why. He got in there afterwards and he did the tired, and I do mean tired. It's tired. I don't care what anyone says. After 20 years or so of this being the norm from athletes, everyone doubted me, everyone da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, no, so many people believe in you. So much, yeah, you were the slight underdog by fight night at the books, but much of the media in this room picked you. All the smart boxing money was on you. People with high boxing IQ was you. And a lot of this media core has was already getting you ready to go to Mount Rushmore, giving you your narrative heading into the fight, and has called you the pound for pound best fighter for a long time in your career and has showered you with deserved praise, myself included. I had Terence Crawford #1 pound for pound in 2017. I picked him to knock out Errol Spence. You know what I like? So it just gets, it's not based in reality. We understand at this point the pattern from Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, Kobe Bryant, Terence Crawford, Floyd Mayweather. It's a mental gymnastic. It's not actually rooted in reality. It's everyone's against me, and that's what allows them to work themselves up to perform at the highest level. And but the reality is, he by always making everything everyone else's fault and everyone's else to get him, that's what made him get in bed first and help bring Daniel Kinahan into the sport. That's what eventually allowed him to get into bed with the Saudi government, is because he always struggled to draw at the highest level. Not that he can't draw. He could sell out Omaha, fought at the MGM, fought at Madison Square Garden. Him and Sean had a pay-per-view fight that did well at the Mandalay Bay. It's not that he can't sell. It's that he can't sell to where he's worth what he made last night. And by always being, not always showing, I've had good moments with Terence Crawford. I remember when I was struggling with some seizures, we did like a 10-minute interview, and he explained, hey man, if you have a seizure, someone's got to put you on your side. And you know, very, very human moment with him. Played paintball with him with Sean. And he's a great family man. Okay. I'm not saying Bud's a bad guy, but nobody in the media has really pointed out what I've just said. You sued Bob Arum in a bullshit lawsuit that never went anywhere, called the man racist who organized the summit meeting between James Brown, a young Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Muhammad Ali when he was being banned from the sport to get him reinstated for the heavyweight title. Everyone who loves what I did with Dana White, I in part did what I had to do with Dana White because of fighters like Terence Crawford, who instead of just eating what they killed, decided, I'm going to get in bed with anybody who will pay me the most. Morals be damned. The bigger picture beyond me be damned. He's the people helping bringing these people in that made me have to ask that kind of question. And so I challenge the Terence Crawford fans, because this is something I touched on when we talked about Tank and Jake Paul a week ago. These winners, at what cost, at what they're putting out in the ether, is what I'm getting at. And prove me wrong then. If you're not just a false idol worship, because like most Steph said about Drake, as the columns are buckling in this society, what does Drake do for you besides let you wave pom-poms, right? And Crawford did a lot more than that. The most beautiful thing about his performance is what the young fighters will study from it. But there's a parallel there to Floyd Mayweather. The young fighters studied Floyd Mayweather and took his brilliance from him, but they also took some of the negative aspects from him, and you see how that played out. If Crawford's going to hand down the skillful brilliance and game to the young generation, but also fuck the media, they'll never give you the credit, and and shit can them, then what if the other downside is you're killing your own whatever, marketability, whatever, and putting yourself in a position like Crawford did, where now you got to get in bed, you got to bring these people into the sport. So I challenge his fans, if I'm wrong, and it's not just false idol worship, and that's why I'm really looking forward to that film, Him, this weekend. I actually want to review it with you, where it's Jordan Peele showing the GOAT. This guy's got 8 Super Bowl rings, but the film's going to touch on at what cost does it be to go. I'm really looking forward to that film. I challenge the Crawford diehards. If I'm wrong, disagree with me like a man. Be respectful. Don't go in the comments doing all that. I'm being respectful about my criticism. Be respectful about yours.
Let me take a sliver of what you said. I'm not addressing even nearly the totality of it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about Jordan, and probably this is true for most of the greats that have that kind of microaggression motivation, that you create in your mind a level of disrespect from the least bit of dismissiveness from anybody, so that you can motivate yourself to put on performances like we saw Saturday night. the things I believe that Terence Crawford says to himself about what people think about him, about what they think he's capable of doing, about what he's not or shouldn't be, where he comes from, what he's uh, expected to do. All of these internal narratives, a lot of which we didn't even know about Jordan until The Last Dance. Like
Right. And his Hall of Fame speech.
we're all locked into the screen. Like, oh, he was mad about that. Oh, he thought that was that big a fucking deal. Oh,
He
that's why
made
he
up a
did that
story. He made up a
because of
story in his
this,
mind that a Washington player, like
because of
literally,
this
it's
and
meant to
this.
literally made it up.
Hold
Go
on,
ahead.
hold on, sorry.
Yeah.
Because of this and this, you don't know internally what the narrative is that puts these guys in the mindset to do the things that we cannot do, that we can't get in the mindset physically to make our bodies do something that our minds are constantly telling us not to do for our own sake, to preserve our own ability to continue to walk and talk and have our muscles function normally. Our brain is telling our body, don't do this. And now not only are you in doing it, but you're doing it at a level that makes you an exceptional athlete, an all-time great, that will make someone chisel your face on a mountain. I don't know what it is that he has to tell himself to get there, but I do see in him that tool that helps him create in his mind the fire that will not allow him to be still. It is a element of that type of greatness. We can make judgment calls on whether or not you're a good person because of it, or how it affects the rest of your life, or how you engage people based on your constant calculation of microaggressions and turning them into macro disrespect. As an athlete, you use what you got to use to fuel the engine. As a person, you try to balance that with maturity and living in the world with the rest of us. And so
Yes.
that is where this conversation
Yes.
is being had. I see that in him. I am not I am not criticizing him in the way that you are, but I recognize the necessity to bring these things into the conversation because yes, he's an all-time great, but we are all humans living on this planet together, and there is a need to hold people accountable for who they are and how they handle that greatness. That's what Sean's doing. When you pick fights, and I just want to make this little accent before we shut it down, you're putting on the line your credibility, your pride, your bragging rights, the comments that you have to read,
Mm-hmm.
the roasting that you might take if you're wrong, the lack of appreciation for the skill that it took to put together the potential fight outcome that you present. And to do that, you have to go somewhere in your mind to gird up your defenses, get your thick skin, and also still believe in yourself and believe that your picks are correct and have the guts to put forward a prediction every time out. I don't put forward predictions anymore. Not necessarily because I don't have the guts, but I don't want the smoke. And I
Raheem
can
had Crawford, by the
honestly
way.
say,
Raheem changed his pick to Crawford after the weigh-in. He should have just said it, but go ahead.
right, but okay, you're right. I would, but you notice I wouldn't even say that. Like you and I both know I picked Crawford, but I wouldn't then after the fight try to get some credit for picking Crawford. And I didn't come on and say publicly that I'm picking Crawford because I don't want what you're willing to put up with after a fight, whether I'm right or wrong. And I don't want to be sitting in the fight rooting for Crawford just because I picked him publicly. I'm doing that for me to keep me a better person.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want the fans to recognize is that we're all working through trying to be the best people we are while being the best at what we do. You're experiencing it. I'm experiencing it. We're taking it on different ways. What you did with Dana White, there was no assurity that the fans were going to come to your support, that you weren't going to get banned from this very fight and maybe every other fight afterwards. You took that moment because of who you are and put on the line what you thought was worth sacrificing to bring to the front what needed to be said. All of these things are us chasing the greatness inside of us. Let's have a little bit of grace for people when they are finding that balance amongst the rest of us. But let's not refuse to hold each other accountable because of that greatness. I appreciate it.
I can distill it now. I've got it now. Mike Tyson said, is a great quote. He goes, "You're great, you're great, you're great. I don't give a fuck about being great anymore. I want to be a good person." Right? Mike said that. He's touching on some of what I'm touching on. And Ali, he said, "When I want to go to heaven when I die." He goes, "You think when I see God, he cares that I beat Joe Frazier? That I beat George Foreman? He's not worried about that. He wants to know who I am." Muhammad Ali, part of his legacy is the Muhammad Ali Reform Act that allowed Terence Crawford and Canelo to make all the money they made last night. Terence Crawford is the guy right now, in part responsible, along with Canelo, along with a lot of other fighters, but that could be responsible for that act getting reprimanded because of the things I said. That's how I could best distill it.